At precisely 6 a.m., the massive glass doors of Carlton and Myers Corporation slid open, and in walked Samuel Reed, dressed in a faded navy blue janitor uniform, pushing a heavy cleaning cart down the silent marble corridors of the 47th floor. His skin was dark, his hands rough, and his eyes carried a quiet weight, not of age but of experience. Years of being overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed. Samuel had been the night janitor at the prestigious law firm for 6 years. He scrubbed floors that others dirted, cleaned offices where no one ever acknowledged him, and emptied trash bins filled with secrets of million-dollar lawsuits and broken corporate deals. He never complained, but that didn't mean he never listened. Every evening, as executives in tailored suits passed him without a second glance, they spoke freely, assuming the black janitor was just another invisible fixture in the office, like the vending machine or the water cooler. But Samuel noticed everything. That Monday morning, as he polished the boardroom table to a perfect shine, he paused to look out the window. The view from the 47th floor was breathtaking, a skyline of opportunity he had been told wasn't for people like him. Still, he smiled. He had a plan 8 years in the making. But none of them knew that. At 8:45 a.m., the elevator doors opened with a chime, and in walked Charles Brenner, the firm's senior partner. Mid-50s, white, ruthless, and with a kind of smirk that made you feel small without him saying a word. Behind him were Linda Strauss and Victor Darnell, both junior executives with fancy degrees, cold laughs, and zero empathy. Charles glanced at Samuel, who was still wiping down the conference chairs. "Still cleaning floors at your age," he scoffed. "If ambition were bleach, you'd be CEO by now." Laughter echoed behind him. Samuel didn't flinch. He just looked up, met Charles's eyes for a second, and returned to polishing. Victor chuckled. "I swear, it's like the janitors here are part of the furniture." Linda added, and just as quiet, the three walked past him like he didn't exist. Like he wasn't a man with a name, a life, and a story. Just a broom with skin. What they didn't know was that Samuel had been listening. Every conversation, every slip of the tongue, every joke, every racist whisper when they thought he wasn't around. He knew things, dangerous things. But more importantly, he had learned at night, when the building emptied out and silence ruled, Samuel would lock himself in the break room, take out his old laptop and study. Law, finance, corporate ethics, mergers, acquisitions, topics the executives boast about. He now understood better than they did. He was self-taught, with online certifications from Harvard, Stanford, and even Wharton, all earned in secret. 8 years ago, Samuel had been one of the most promising financial strategists in Atlanta until a racially motivated firing and a fabricated HR scandal left him blacklisted in the industry. With no job, no reputation, and a sick mother to care for, he took the first job he could find, janitor. The world may have stripped him of his title, but it never took his intellect or his resolve. Later that same day, Charles and the board held a closed-door meeting. Through the glass walls, Samuel could see their lips moving, hear their laughter, and sense the arrogance. "They're finalizing the international expansion," whispered one of the receptionists. Samuel raised an eyebrow. He knew about that deal. Too much, actually. He'd overheard Victor talking about it in the men's room a week ago, about how they were manipulating numbers, hiding losses, and planning to pin it all on an underrepresented staff member if things went sideways. Typical corporate cowardice. But something else had caught Samuel's attention in the reports he saw discarded in trash bins. The firm was unknowingly merging with Shell Company, run by a Chinese firm that had recently filed bankruptcy under another name. Fraud. Federal crime. Billions at stake. And Samuel knew it all. He had all the emails, all the financial projections. He even had a flash drive with voice recordings from late-night meetings where executives thought no one was around. He hadn't intended to expose them. Not yet. He wanted to leave quietly, maybe start his own firm. But then they mocked him, mocked his skin, his age, his role. That changed everything. That night, Samuel didn't go home after his shift. He stayed in the building. At 2:15 a.m., the empty boardroom lights flickered on. Samuel sat alone at the massive table, his laptop open, a phone call on speaker. "Mr. Reed." said the voice on the other end. "After reviewing your documents, we are very interested in your proposal. If what you say is true, Carlton and Myers is exposed to multiple SEC violations." "It's all true," Samuel replied, "and I'm prepared to testify." There was a pause. "In exchange for?" Samuel leaned back, full immunity and full control. The silence that followed was cold, calculating. "Mr. Reed, we don't usually offer such deals to janitors." "I'm not a janitor," Samuel said, his voice calm. "Not anymore." The next morning, Carlton and Myers buzzed with energy. The executives were dressed sharper than usual. Tension hung in the air like static. Today was the day the international expansion deal would be signed, the same one that Samuel knew could bury the company if left unchecked. Victor Darnell was strutting through the hallway, already celebrating. "After this deal closes," he boasted to the secretary, "I'll be VP by the end of Q3. Maybe sooner if the old man retires." Linda Strauss smirked. "Hope you've been practicing your smug smile for the press photos." None of them noticed Samuel as he passed with his cleaning cart, once again invisible, just the way he liked it. At 9 a.m. sharp, a black sedan pulled up in front of the building. Out stepped two men in suits, each holding leather briefcases and credentials that made the front desk security guard stiffen. "SEC," one of them said, "we're here for an urgent meeting with the board." Upstairs, Charles Brenner was laughing over a glass of whiskey. "You know what separates winners from losers?" He asked a group of junior partners. "Losers do the work. Winners delegate and collect credit." Just as he raised his glass, the doors to the boardroom burst open. "Charles Brenner?" asked the taller agent. Charles's smile froze. "We have reason to believe your firm has engaged in fraudulent activity relating to offshore shell companies and misrepresentation of corporate finances." Gasps rippled through the room. "What the hell is this?" Victor stood up, red-faced. The agent dropped a stack of documents on the table. "Email transcripts, transaction logs, whistleblower testimony, and audio recordings, all pointing to illegal practices within your merger strategy." Charles looked like a ghost. "This is a mistake. Who gave you this?" The agent didn't answer, but at that exact moment, the elevator dinged, and in walked Samuel Reed, not in his janitor uniform, not with his cart, but in a tailored charcoal gray suit, briefcase in hand, posture tall and eyes sharp. He stepped into the room slowly, purposefully. Silence fell like a hammer. Charles's face twisted. What is he doing here? Samuel looked directly at him, not a flicker of fear in his eyes. "I believe I'm expected." Linda stood up. "This is absurd. He's a janitor." "Correction," said one of the agents. "Mr. Reed is the whistleblower. And as of this morning, he is also the acting interim COO, appointed by the Board of Trustees pending further investigation." Chaos erupted. "You can't do this." Victor shouted. "He's not qualified." Samuel placed a folder on the table. "I believe my credentials speak for themselves." Inside, diplomas, financial certifications, executive leadership credentials, and a business plan he'd quietly developed over the past year. One that not only saved Carlton and Myers, but set them up to recover from the damage the corrupt executives had done. "You buried this company in lies," Samuel said calmly. "I'm here to rebuild it with truth." The next several hours were a blur. Federal agents escorted Charles, Victor, and Linda from the building under heavy scrutiny. Cameras from the press captured it all. 3 powerful executives being led away while reporters screamed questions. But none of that compared to what happened internally. The staff buzzed with rumors. "Did you hear? Samuel, the janitor, he's in charge now." "Wait, what?" "The guy who mopped the floors." "That's wild, but honestly, he always seemed too smart to be cleaning toilets." In the boardroom, Samuel addressed the entire company leadership team. "I know what many of you are thinking," he began, "that I'm just a janitor. And that might be true. I've mopped these floors, cleaned your offices, and thrown away your trash." A pause. "But I also listened, learned, studied. I saw a company where talent was buried under arrogance, where people with heart were crushed under people with titles." He turned to face the window, the skyline behind him. "I didn't come here to take revenge. I came here to build a better company. One where people are seen, heard, valued. The room was silent. Some watched in awe, others in guilt. 3 days later, Samuel's face was on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. From janitor to CEO, the whistleblower who cleaned house at Carlton and Myers. He appeared on talk shows, interviewed by financial networks, praised for his courage and integrity. But none of the attention changed him. He still arrived early, still spoke to the receptionist by name, still shook hands with the janitors. Only now, when he walked past executives in the hallway, they stood up. Back in Queens, Charles sat in his dark apartment, staring at the TV as Samuel delivered a keynote at a corporate ethics summit. Gone were the days of leather chairs and aged whiskey. Now, his name was synonymous with corporate fraud and disgrace. He had underestimated a man because of his uniform and paid the price for it. Meanwhile, Samuel met with the board. "I want to launch a mentorship program," he said, "for employees in non-executive roles. Janitors, cafeteria workers, maintenance staff, anyone who's been overlooked." The board agreed unanimously. He named it the Second Step Initiative, because sometimes all people need is that one step forward, one door open, one person who believes in their potential. That Friday, as Samuel walked past the lobby, a young janitor, maybe 22, nervous and shy, was mopping the floor. He looked up, startled to see the CEO walking by. Samuel stopped. "What's your name?" he asked kindly. Deshawn, sir." Samuel smiled. "Deshawn, how would you like to have lunch next week? I think we should talk about your future." Deshawn blinked. "You want to have lunch with me?" "Absolutely." And just like that, another life was about to change. A month had passed and Samuel Reed stepped into the role of CEO. A moment that had made headlines, stirred corporate boardrooms across the country, and inspired countless underdogs who saw in him the impossible made real. But now, the cameras were gone. The lights had dimmed, and what was left was the weight of leadership. Samuel sat in his new corner office, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the skyline, but his eyes weren't on the view. They were locked on a spreadsheet glowing on his monitor. Carlton and Myers was bleeding. The fraudulent deals orchestrated by Charles and his team had left deep cracks in the company's foundation. Public trust was shaky. Shareholders were nervous. Staff morale, while curious and respectful, wasn't exactly thriving. The truth? Samuel wasn't stepping into a throne. He was stepping into a minefield. He called an emergency meeting with the executive team, now restructured with new faces, many of whom had once been unheard voices in the company. Among them, Natalie Ramirez, a Latina single mother from HR who had revolutionized internal policies but was previously ignored. Darius Cole, an IT wizard who had kept the company's tech systems alive but was always passed over for leadership. And Rebecca Kwan, a sharp-witted legal analyst who discovered inconsistencies in board decisions years ago, but had been silenced when she raised her voice. Now, they sat at the table as equals. "We're not just fixing a company," Samuel began. "We're repairing a legacy." The room was quiet. He continued, "This firm was built on power and ego. We're going to rebuild it with people and purpose." Then he showed the numbers. The debt, the drop in public trust, the lawsuits pending. Some team members looked rattled. Others looked ready. Natalie broke the silence. "We can turn this around, but not if we keep pretending we're fine. We need transparency." "Full," Rebecca agreed. "No more hiding the truth from staff or stakeholders." Darius added, "And we need to invest in actual talent. People like us. People who've been in the shadows too long." Samuel smiled. "Then let's begin." The first public statement from Carlton and Myers under Samuel's leadership wasn't a polished PR release. It was a live video, streamed on all platforms, with no script, just Samuel standing in front of the company's lobby, dressed simply, speaking directly. "I want to talk to you, our clients, our community, our critics. You've heard about the scandal. You've seen the headlines. Now you deserve the truth." He laid it all out, the fraud, the arrests, the investigations. He didn't dodge a single fact. And then he said, "But that's not the end of the story. That's the beginning of ours. a company that listens, that leads with humility, that rises from the ashes with the people who are always there, just never seen. The video went viral, not because of fancy effects, but because of honesty. Within 2 weeks, something incredible happened. Clients returned. One by one, corporations, nonprofits, and even startups began to re-engage Carlton and Myers, citing Samuel's integrity as the reason. "I'd rather have a company led by a former janitor with conscience," one CEO said, "than a boardroom full of suits who can't spell honesty." But success didn't come without resistance. Not everyone was happy to see Samuel win. Former executives, bitter and angry, began whispering to the media, trying to paint him as a fluke, a PR stunt, an inexperienced figurehead. One of them even wrote a column titled, "Why Janitors Don't Belong in the C-Suite." It went viral for the wrong reasons. Within hours, thousands of comments, duets, stitches, and replies tore the article apart. Young professionals, seasoned veterans, and blue-collar workers stood behind Samuel. One user wrote, "I'd rather be led by someone who cleaned toilets with pride than someone who dirted boardrooms with lies." And Samuel? He said nothing. He didn't need to. His actions spoke louder. Inside the company, a quiet revolution was taking place. The Second Step Initiative launched officially, an internal scholarship and mentorship program giving janitors, cafeteria workers, and lower-level staff the chance to attend online classes, receive coaching, and apply for roles beyond their original stations. Deshaun, the young janitor Samuel had spoken to, was now shadowing Darius in IT. A cafeteria worker named Esther, 52, was now taking night classes in business administration with full tuition covered. And a parking attendant, Malik, with a passion for design, was hired as a junior brand assistant after Samuel reviewed his sketches one afternoon. People started to believe again, not just in the company, but in themselves. But even as progress bloomed, Samuel carried something heavy. Guilt, memories of those years spent cleaning in silence, mocked and ignored. The times he almost gave up, the mother he lost to cancer while he scrubbed floors to pay for her medicine. He carried her photograph in his wallet, always, and late at night, in his now luxurious office, he'd sometimes pull it out and whisper, "We made it, Ma." They laugh, but we made it. That Friday, the firm hosted its first ever Legacy Day, a new tradition Samuel created to honor the unsung heroes of the company: security guards, night crew, office support, and janitorial staff. No suits, no speeches, just gratitude. And at the end of it, Samuel stepped up to the mic and said, "Today isn't about me. It's about you. Because every building, every empire, every dream rests on people who clean the dust while others look up at the stars." And with that, he removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and joined the crew in cleaning the conference room, the same one he once mopped in silence. Now, the silence was gone, and the room was full of applause. 6 months had passed and Samuel Reed became CEO of Carlton and Myers. What began as a shocking headline had grown into a transformation that no one could predict it, not even Samuel himself. The office halls that once echoed with snide laughter and elitist whispers now resonated with collaboration, mentorship, and purpose. And yet, the journey wasn't over. In fact, the most important chapter was just beginning. The awards that didn't matter. It was a Thursday morning when Samuel's assistant entered his office with a letter marked "Confidential" from the governor's office. He opened it slowly. Inside, he found an official invitation. "You have been selected to receive the State Medal for Economic Leadership and Social Impact." Samuel leaned back in his chair. It was surreal. His first job had been sweeping floors in a middle school for $6.25 an hour. Now he was being honored alongside billionaires and legislators. But when he told his team, he added, "That medal won't fix our broken hiring system. It won't put food on anyone's table. The real award is what we build for the next person who gets laughed at just for showing up." So instead of attending the award ceremony in a tuxedo, he showed up at Hawthorne Community College that same day to announce a partnership program, a fully funded career bridge initiative for working adults, especially custodial and facility staff in the city. Dozens of attendees were emotional. A man in the back raised his hand. Why are you doing this? Why do you care so much? Samuel replied gently, because I used to be the invisible man in the room. And nobody should ever stay invisible just because they can't afford to be seen. Back where it all started. The next morning, Samuel returned to the Carlton and Myers building earlier than usual. He wasn't in his tailored suit. He wore the same faded blue jumpsuit he used to wear as a janitor. Some employees stared in confusion. But Samuel walked confidently to the janitor's closet, still tucked away in the far hallway. He opened the door and stepped inside. Everything was smaller than he remembered. The shelves, the sink, the silence. He reached up and pulled down an old clipboard, the same one where he used to check off toilet cleanings and supply restocks. Behind it, taped to the wall, was a photo of his mother, the one he'd put there years ago for strength. He sat quietly, and then he cried, not from pain, but from pride. "You kept me strong, Ma," he whispered. "When the world told me I didn't belong, you reminded me who I was." A chance meeting. Later that day, as he walked through the lobby, Samuel noticed a new janitor struggling to carry a box of supplies. He stopped, walked over, and offered to help. The janitor, a young man named Troy, looked stunned. "Wait, aren't you the CEO?" Samuel smiled. "And you're part of the reason I'm here. Let me give you a hand." Troy stammered. "I don't know what to say. No one's ever helped me like this." Samuel set the box down and looked him in the eye. "Never forget this. It doesn't matter where you start. What matters is who you choose to become. Stay hungry, stay kind, and never let their titles intimidate your dreams." Troy nodded slowly, eyes wide, as if he had just witnessed a future version of himself. The former executive. 2 weeks later, Samuel received a letter in the mail. It was handwritten, shaky cursive, smudged ink. From Charles Whitman, the former executive who had humiliated Samuel on his first day. The man was now facing a lifetime ban from any executive position, a mountain of debt, and irreparable damage to his name. The letter read, "Samuel, I never thought I'd write this, but I need to. I remember laughing when you spilled coffee. I remember the jokes we made. I thought I was above you, but the truth is, I feared you, not because you were loud, but because you were quiet. You listened, you remembered, and when the moment came, you rose, not with revenge, but with honor. I was wrong, and I hope someday you'll forgive me. Charles." Samuel read the letter twice. Then he placed it in a drawer marked Lessons. He didn't need an apology. The world had already given him something far more powerful. Perspective. The full circle moment. That summer, Carlton and Myers hosted a national conference called From Floor to Future, Rethinking Corporate Leadership. Samuel was the keynote speaker. Hundreds of business leaders, educators, and young professionals gathered to hear him speak. He stood at the podium, took a deep breath, and began. 3 years ago, I pushed a janitor's cart through this very building. I remember the way they looked at me, as if I was a part of the furniture. Today, I want to thank them, because their dismissal fueled my drive. Their arrogance sharpened my vision, and their underestimation became my greatest weapon. He paused and smiled. But I didn't rise by myself. I rose because of every person who ever dared to dream in the dark. Every night shift worker, every first-generation student, every single person who was told, "You're not the type we're looking for." Well, guess what? We're exactly the type the world needs. The room erupted in a standing ovation, and somewhere in the back row, a young intern wiped away tears. The legacy. By the end of his first year, Carlton and Myers had achieved the following: a 27% increase in annual revenue without a single layoff, over 200 employees promoted from within, many from custodial and support departments, the creation of the Ground Up Leadership Fund, a nonprofit dedicated to training overlooked talent in corporate environments. Samuel's story became the subject of documentaries, college case studies, and yes, thousands of YouTube videos like yours. But when asked what he was proudest of, he always said that I still look the janitor in the eye when I passed him in the hallway, because I never stopped being one. I just started leading like one. Final words for the audience. If the story moved you, remember, greatness doesn't come from suits, titles, or corner offices. It comes from grit, humility, and a heart that never forgets where it started. So whatever floor you're on right now, whether you're sweeping it, walking it, or overlooked on it, your time is coming, just like Samuel's. And when it does, stand tall, stay kind, and make room for others to rise with you.